And welcome to the Barry Foster Show, coming to you from the Ridge Floor Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. As always, any comments that you have, thoughts, ideas, or suggestions, just put them in the comments below. And remember, when it comes to flowers, you want to go to Ridge Florist. Birthdays, anniversaries, whatever occasion you need, Ridge Florist has it. Either their beautiful original designs or their FTD designs. You want to find out more, go to ridgefloristinc.com. Give them a call at 863-382-4477 or stop on by their studios, 111 Memorial Drive, just north of the intersection of the Sebring Parkway and Memorial. Tell them Barry sent you by. We are delighted on the phone to have Wayne Estes, president of the Sebring International Raceway, for a little while longer. Wayne, good to have you with us, my friend.
Yeah, actually, I'm not the president anymore. I'm around for a few weeks, but
are you the president emeritus now?
You know, they were looking for a title, and I think the easiest thing was just take the title off. Just don't worry about that.
I'm just Wayne.
Matt Muha succeeded me on January the 1st. December 31st was my last day as a president and general manager, and you know, now I get to have the fun and no responsibility, so it's really perfect.
How cool is that?
If I'd known this gig was available, I'd have not retired. I'd have just stayed in this role for like ever.
So. Now, when you first came, you came in 2015, but you have a long motorsports background behind you before you got here.
How far back do you want me to go?
Well, we can start when you first came to Sebring in '85. We can start then.
Okay, well, it goes way before then.
Okay.
Do you know how far back it goes?
I do not.
Do you want to hear this? Because
Yes.
This might take a while.
Yeah.
So, I was born in 1957. You're laughing, but my mother, we lived in East Point, Georgia, which was near the Atlanta airport. It still is. And it was a community filled with like VA kind of homes. You know, all these were 2-bedroom, 1-bath kind of houses, box houses next to each other. And they all had full basements because that part of Atlanta had great terrain and you could have a basement. But a full basement in a small house like that, not a lot of space. 1-car garage. In the house next door to us was a Delta pilot and his wife. His wife was a beautician, and he was a Delta pilot and builder of race cars. And he built cars that ran at Darlington. He built a car for Fireball Roberts. He built a car for Johnny Beauchamp. He built a car for Eddie Pagan. There's a famous photo of Eddie Pagan's car going through the guardrail in 1958, I think, at the Southern 500, and took down all these sections of posts and guardrails, and it was in Life magazine. That car was built next door to where I was a baby, a toddler. And my mother says it's because she used to stick my playpen out there on that back porch. And I smelled all those exhaust fumes and heard those engines that made me want to do this for my entire life. And so maybe there's something to that. But, you know, my dad took me to my first race when I was 9 years old. He took me to my first big race when I was 9 years old. If you ask where, when I went to my first NASCAR race, it was at Atlanta, a 400-miler. Won by Marvin Patch and a Wood Brothers Ford. And that's like 1966, you know. So it's been a while. And from the time that I saw it and from the time I heard Start Your Engines, from the time I heard a green flag drop, I've been trying to get all my friends to love it as much as I have. And I went to school, planned to be a motorsports journalist because I didn't want to drive. I didn't think I had the talent. Didn't want to try to build anything, but I did want to just keep on watching it. And I've just been a race fan. And I went to school with a journalism degree goal because I wanted to be a motorsports writer. And my first job out of school was for the Savannah News Press. The MC Anderson racing team was operating out of Savannah at that time. But I did stories at the local dirt tracks. I went to a couple of NASCAR races with Cale Yarborough and that MC Anderson team, and Benny Parsons and that team. And there was Roebling Road was an SEC road course that operated out of there. And I did stories on there was a plastic surgeon in town, a plastic surgeon named Dr. Ronald Finger what a great name for a plastic surgeon, don't you think?
Yes.
And he ran a car. I can't remember what the class was, but these cars were snowmobiles, except the power drain on the snowmobile ran a four-wheeled car. Looked like a spec Ford or like an old Can-Am car shrunk down. But I mean, if it was a race car, it didn't matter if it was at Road Atlanta. It didn't matter if it was wherever it was. That's where I wanted to go. But that job kind of ran out because MC Anderson ended up selling his race team to Raymond Beadle that went on to become Rusty Wallace's championship team. Cale Yarborough moved on and did other things. He wanted to be a short-termer. He didn't want to run all the races. And he ended up at Harry Ranier and set speed records up there. All these things were kind of happening, and it didn't look like it was going to happen for me. And I took a job with the Coca-Cola Company. And the first thing I did was try to figure out how can I use the Coca-Cola Company to get to go to races. And they took me to. I went to the Indianapolis 500. Didn't actually attend the race, but I was there for the pre-event things. Went to the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte and the Mellow Yellow 300 at Charlotte. And I managed to find a way to get to Sebring, Florida, and do a story on the Coca-Cola Classic before it was actually a product. It was the Coca-Cola Classic 12 Hours of Sebring in 1985, where A.J. Foyt and Bob Wallach were driving the swap shop Porsche 962. It may have been the last race that Bob Wallach ever won. It was definitely the last race that A.J. Foyt ever won. Of course, Bob Wallach was tragically killed a year or two later down here in a bicycle accident.
Yes.
Out on Highway 98 near Loretta. So this has just been something that I have loved to be around. My wife and I, before we were married, spent a weekend at Road Atlanta watching IMSA Camel G. So we went to an IndyCar USAC stock car doubleheader at Atlanta many years ago when Charlie Daniels' band was appearing I talked her into going because Charlie Daniels was playing. They were playing about a mile and a quarter away from where we were sitting in the grandstands, but and that's not an exaggeration. I mean, they put them off in the infield, and the fans weren't allowed to go in the infield, so they just played. It was the craziest thing. So that's kind of the story. You do those things, and then people along the way end up knowing who you are and what your interests are, and if you've got a passion for something. And a friend of mine that I had, we worked on the college newspaper together at Georgia Southern, and he managed to land a job with Ford's public relations, Ford Racing's public relations, Ford Motorsport they called it at the time. And he knew that I had media background. He knew that I'd had the corporate life at Coca-Cola, figured I could handle myself around Ford Motor executives if I could handle myself around Coca-Cola executives. And he knew I had the car bug. And he said, Wayne, you should do this job. And the job at that time was, just come to Detroit and we'll send you to some races and you just do PR. Well, that wasn't very attractive. First of all, moving to Detroit from Atlanta was no bed of roses. And the idea that they would send me on the road and leave my wife and kids in Detroit while I was out in the sunnier part of the world was not very attractive. So we turned them down for a year. And they called me back a year later. And this is about the time that Bill Elliott was Bill Elliott. I mean, this was 87 when they called me in January. And I had watched Bill Elliott run at Dixie Speedway in Woodstock, Georgia, after I got off work at Winn-Dixie back when I was in school. So I was a produce guy, if you wondered. Cleaned lots of produce racks and stuff. But I'd sneak off the racetrack, especially if I got off late. I figured out how I could get in without paying money. And you always get to see the feature races until they got wise to that and started cutting it off. But, man, I saw on that little racetrack in North Atlanta, I mean, Bobby Allison came through there. Richard Petty came through there. David Pierce and Neil Bonnet. I mean, the stars of NASCAR at that time rotated through Dixie Speedway on a regular basis, and we saw some terrific events up there. But all of that ended up leading to a guy named Eddie Donato, and who had worked. He'd been the editor of the college paper at Georgia Southern. He moved to Florida. He got a job with this real estate development group somehow ended up coming to Harder Hall for the Sebring race, and he ended up meeting Rod Campbell. And Rod Campbell was putting together the Ford Public Relations program that was new at that time in the mid 80s. And so they called me in 86 and then called me back in 87 and said, hey, what if we let you do this from a satellite office in Atlanta, where then my wife and kids could stay with their grandparents and such. And so that led to the Ford job. And I went to NASCAR races you talk about being in heaven. If you're a race fan and you get to go do the NASCAR public relations program for Ford Motor Company, I was working with Bill Elliott, Rusty Wallace, Robert Yates, Bud Moore, the Wood brothers. In that time, we had Davey Allison, Alan Kowicki, just guys that were just so much fun to work with. And but that job, it was a physical job, and I started wondering, I said, man, when I get to be 40 or 50 years old, am I going to be able to keep doing this? And so I started thinking a racetrack would be a better place to go. And I was able to get a job at Bristol Motor Speedway and work for a tremendous person named Jeff Bird, who had 20 years at RJ Reynolds during the great Winston years. He was the second or third employee to go to work for Winston's sports marketing program. He was a show car driver in the beginning, but he became one of the most important executives at Winston. He saw the handwriting on the wall for what the tobacco companies were going to go through. And when Bruton Smith purchased Bristol Motor Speedway, he hired Jeff Bird, and it wasn't too long after that Jeff Bird hired me to be a PR guy, which I was for several years until when Bruton purchased Las Vegas Motor Speedway. When he purchased Vegas, Jeff Bird said, hey, Bruton, those guys out there are going to need your help. Why don't you let us go be your people? So he sent his ticket manager, his finance director, his PR director, all of us went out there and helped them. And we got out there and they found out they got all the people they need. They don't really need our help. So we just ended up enjoying the weekend. They ran the World of Outlaws out there that weekend. World of Outlaws sprint cars run on a dirt track next to the big track. And the finance director and I were standing on top of a truck watching these races. He had never seen them before. He was thrilled. I was just soaking up something that I really, really enjoyed. And he said, we should build one of these tracks at Bristol. And I said, well, Fred, we've already got a half-mile track. Why don't we just cover our track with dirt, and we'll run World of Outlaws in the summertime? And we came back and told Jeff, and Jeff looked at us and he said, that is just the kind of idea that Bruton would probably love. And he came back and said, Wayne, tell you what, you be the general manager for that event, and I'll be your PR guy. Well, it didn't turn out exactly like that, but he did give me that project. And then after that first year was over, he told me everything I did wrong.
Well, thank you.
He said, the show that you put on, he said, everything you did inside the walls was great, but you didn't pay a bit of attention to anything outside. You didn't pay attention to the traffic. You didn't pay attention to parking lots. You didn't pay attention to the lines at the concession stands. He said, I'm going to move you into that part of the business so that you can learn that. And he did. He moved me from the communications department to the events department. And I worked with a terrific group that taught me that you can't just open up the gates and, expect people to come and be happy if the show's great. You have to take care of those people. And it made all the difference in the world. The time that I spent there, I was out in the parking lots helping park cars when we did our big Christmas show. I was out there in the middle of the night doing whatever it needed to be done because I wanted to be. I really, really enjoyed it. Enjoyed the logistics, and if you ask my wife what I do right now, she'll say Wayne parks cars, and that's not it's not a falsehood. It's not inaccurate. We say right now when the 12 Hours of Sebring runs, the president and general manager of the racetrack, one of the most important things he does is park cars, because you want to park as many cars efficiently as possible to get people in and out safely. And if you do that in a really, really good way, everything else sort of takes care of itself. So that's kind of my story. After I did the Bristol thing, it really enabled me to come to Sebring. Jeff tragically, we lost him to he had a brain tumor and fought through it, and I think he beat it. But sometimes the cure will take you out too, and it was a rough go for him and a rough go for all of us. And after he was gone, my place in Bristol was kind of gone too, and I tried to do something else. And frankly, I used to pray about, Lord, tell me what my next step is. And I was very fortunate. After a brief period, I was introduced to an executive at Chick-fil-A, and it was happenstance. It was one of those things where we just sat down and started talking, and he said, you and I have the same story. He said, I used to pray that God would tell me where to go. He said, then one day I woke up and realized, God gave you talents, God gave you opportunity, God gave you a passion. It's kind of like that thing where, the guy on the top of the roof, he turns down the ride from the helicopter, the boat, and everything.
Yeah.
Same story. He says, God gives you all these things. You really just follow that path. And he says, for whatever reason, he says, my passion, he said, this sounds strange to most people. He said, my passion was fast food. He said, what's your passion? Frankly, my passion's just always been race cars. I mean, it's just been watching race cars. So, it's just a great opportunity to do something like that. And
so
at that time, I started reaching back out to people and saying, I was going to go away from this, but I'm looking for an opportunity. And Rick Humphrey, who is now president and general manager at Road Atlanta, he had contacted me and had suggested that maybe I would want to go to Road Atlanta. And I was very interested in that job because that was one of my old home stomping grounds. I knew every quarter of the inch of the property up there back, 30 years before. But later he called me back and he says, hey, would you be interested in Sebring? What, live in Florida for the rest of my life? Yeah. So that's how I ended up here. And it's been a great run.
So when you came to Sebring, you really that was kind of a blank slate. You looked as much at moving the fans around and getting the fans in as you did about putting cars on the track.
Hey, there was other people to take care of getting cars on the track. You really don't have to worry about. I mean, I told the group when I came in here from the very beginning, I said, IMSA is going to take care of the paddock. You guys need to take care of track runners. The marketing guys here can take care of the suites. And I said, but our primary responsibility here is to the people who are out there in Green Park. Now, I had been told by executives in Daytona Beach who no longer are executives in Daytona, but the people who were up there when I was hired, I said, just don't even bother going to Green Park. What happens in Green Park, just let it happen. Just don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. Well, I went to Green Park and found out that's where all the race fans are. There's this perception that it's just this giant wild party. But when you go out to turn 10, turn 11, turn 12, you see people are on the fence and they're keeping up with what's going on. And they're at that time, the GT races were spectacular during the 12 hours. You had, Ford GTs were on the track against Corvettes and Ferraris and Porsches. And you would see those 8 cars, 2 of each, were running together just in a pack around the racetrack, like all the time, all afternoon. And these guys on the fence line out there leaning on the fence were paying close attention to that. And I said, this is where our people are. Well, why would we ignore that? One of the first things we did was tear down a restroom that was out there that looked like it had been left over, not from the war, but from like the First World War. And I mean, it was embarrassing. And when I sent that note back, I said, this restroom needs to be replaced. It is an embarrassment for NASCAR to own a property with this as restroom out here. And they gave us a nice facility with good shower, and as soon as it happened, I thought, I'm so proud of this. And I thought, I've heard that from every track promoter I've ever known about. They get more excited about restrooms than anything else. but for good reason, because if people come to the racetrack and they don't have a good place to use a restroom, they don't have a decent place to shower, if it's not clean, if it's not something that women want to come to, that hurts your ticket sales significantly. You have to have a good place to go. So that was a biggie, and we got that very early. And then you got a 1-lane bridge that goes to Green Park that people waited in long lines just to get across during the races, and that was crazy. It took a little longer to get that one done, but we were able to get that one accomplished. It's now we've got another new bridge. This is pretty remarkable that in 10 years we managed to get 2 bridges built across this property. But this new one that's going to be available to people for the 74th running here in a few weeks, it's going to really change things. It's going to enable people to park on that side of the racetrack and just walk straight into the paddock. So that we've been able to get a few things done like that have mattered. We've been able to restore the area around the Hendricksfield flagpole. We've been able to restore the last building that was here from World War II and convert it into an officers club, tribute to the veterans that were here before. So all those things matter. They do matter. And Barry, I'll tell you, the other thing that matters is talking to the people and not talking at them, but introducing yourself and then let them tell you what needs to be done. Let them tell us what their experiences are and how we could improve them. And in many, many cases, we were able to do that. And that rings true to the fans.
Well, I know that you walk around the track a lot, and you walk around in what I would call civilian clothes. That you're just Wayne, and you're talking with the fans. Have some of the ideas that have come to fruition out there been the fans just talking and say, hey, the one thing that really makes me mad out here is this. I wish they would do this.
Yes, frequently. I mean, constantly. So many things that have happened out here, and they're frequent. Sometimes they're little things. What can you do? One of the very first things is, so it's Oklahoma Land Rush when you guys open the gates up on that first morning. Can you not find some way to organize that? Well, yeah. Yes, we can. And we set out to do that pretty quickly. So if you came out here right now and looked in the pre-staging area, this is today is March the 5th when you and I are talking. So the gates open on March the 17th. So there are 6 long rows of people, and they're queued up in the order in which they're going to enter the racetrack, and they're okay with that. The day that they start to posture out there and get ready for when the pre-stage area opens up is now a little bit of a cluster. But at the same time, when people get into their places, they get into lines, they get comfortable because they look over and they realize the Dodge City guys, okay, there's nobody in front of me right now that wants my spot, because that's the turn 10 guys over there, and that's the palm tree guys from turn 2. And that's, it's just how it works. They get out there and they get comfortable once they're in line. So there are those who have said, just go ahead and reserve the areas of Green Park. I said, y'all can do that after I've retired and gone. If y'all want to do that, but I suggest you talk to the fans and find out if that's what they want. Because I think a lot of them really do enjoy the whole process out here. We had said from the very beginning, we wanted to improve it, but we didn't want to lose the character of Sebring and what it means to everybody. But we also didn't want that to be an excuse for neglect. So those are pretty important things. Oh. You cannot just say, well, it's always been that way, so we're not going to do anything with it. No, if there's a way to pave a road that's always dirty and dusty and aggravating for people, then you do it. This year, the road to turn 16 didn't exist past midway down the Ullman Strait. And, that's been remedied this year. Now there's a viewing mound in turn 16. I'm talking driver's left. And it's an area that presently, or before now, there really hasn't been a lot of access to it. But that's a whole different view of the racetrack that only photographers and TV cameras have had up to this point. A few employees have been back there, but now it's open to everybody. and it's a good place. But you can't do something like that without giving people a way to get back there. So now there's a road. It's not exactly paved, but it was done with asphalt millings, so it doesn't get real dusty. There's just a number of things like that people who said, "Man, I wish I could do this." Wish your trams were more organized, because when a tram pulls up, there's no line. Well, now there is. There have been requests for better facilities for people who are, like in wheelchairs. And in the time that we've been here, actually, when I first got here, if you were in a wheelchair, your options were to get on an elevator and go to either the Gurney Terrace or the Fangio Terrace. That's what they had. Well, that's not much of a racetrack. So now there are viewing mounts with ramps in turn 17. So you can see, if a person in a wheelchair can see everything that comes down the back straightaway into turn 17, watch cars bounce through there. They can go to turn 3. There's an excellent viewing mount and wheelchair spaces and a ramp up to that point. We've created spaces in the turn 9 area. We've created spaces. Now we've created new paddock spaces. There are 10 wheelchair spots available right next to the tower, so people can get to the suites, or they can get to the paddock easily. So all those things, Barry. I won't say it. Sometimes it's obvious when somebody comes up and says, "Hey, you should do this." Yep, we should, and we will.
Wayne, one of the first things that you did when you came in, and I was astonished by this, but you painted everything Sebring blue and put these 2 giant "Welcome to Sebring" banners across the Gurney and the Fangio Terrace. And the first thing that I saw when you came in was the great welcoming to fans and the pulling of all the elements together simply by painting them all the same color.
Blue is Sebring color, and there are different shades of blue that we use out here. I know there's a Sebring blue, but there's also you get to do with things with when we modified the logo out here and turned the R into a 12, because the 12, frankly, is that's the brand. You can say what you want to, but people know Sebring not because there's a racetrack here. They know it because the 12 Hours of Sebring has competed here, has been contested here for 3/4 of a century. So the 12 is definitely part of the brand, and so we use 2 shades of blue there. When I got here, everything was gray, and it looked gray. It looked bland. And somebody told me a long time ago, man, nothing really spruces anything up like color, whether it's flowers or paint or whatever. And we started we put out a few more flowers. We tried to make sure that the entrances were dressed up with some natural looking things. And when we started painting first the restrooms were the first things we painted the dark blue. Now, a lot of the pit structure is dark blue. It does matter. And when Matt Muha got here, he said, the blue and white walls look really good on the racetrack. We should do that in other places. So now it carries over the walls over to the bridge are blue and white. And there's definitely a blue and white theme going on here. But it should. That's what Sebring is. We recognize the blue streaks up the road too,
Well, when you got here, one of the guys that was here already and had been here for a while is a guy who was the track historian as well as the media guy, was Ken Breslauer, and his ability to give you kind of a retrospective must have been a great help. I mean, he hashtagged respect the bumps, so that had to be a great help to see the developments that we've seen over the past decade.
Ken Breslauer is a treasure. There really are 2 historians. They're unofficial, but the other is Doug Morton.
Yes.
Between those 2, I continue to lean on them. Among the things I've sent, now that I'm not the president, one of the things I did take on, we are working hard right now to make sure that 75th anniversary, or rather 75th, when the 75th running happens in 2027, it needs to be special. Fans expect it to be special. And so we are creating a number of different things. But the guys that are trying to put on this event this time, they didn't need to be distracted. So I said, well, okay, maybe I can work on some of these 75th things. And when Matt took over, I said, what would you like me to do? He says, would you please just do all the 75th stuff? I said, yes, sir, I will. And among the things that we've done, we've worked, both of them have been on a committee to help determine what we're calling the class of 75. There will be, we were going to recognize, next year we will recognize the 75 greatest drivers in Sebring's 75-year runnings of the race. Whenever I get ready to do something like that, I tend to lean on those guys to make sure we get it right. The base of the trophy, the perpetual Alec Ullman trophy, we are going to do something new with that. But if you come into our lobby right now and look at it, you will see some people on that trophy, and sometimes the cars. Let me put it this way. There's a lot of typos on it, okay? If we decided to have a contest right now to see who can catch the most typos, there would be some challenge trying to figure it out because there's some debates on how certain Europeans spell their names. But there are places on the trophy where the same guy's name will be spelled differently in two different places. So we wanted to get that fixed, and we want to get it fixed before next year. And I leaned heavily on Ken and Doug to help me with that. We put up some new plaques around the track this year. One in a new park that we've created in the middle of Green Park is now Collier Curve Park, so turn 11. But there's a sign there to explain why it's called Collier Curve. And after writing the draft of what's going to go on that plaque, I ran it past both Doug and Ken so that they could take a look at it. And both of them offered corrections and better ways to write it. And in some cases, we did the same thing with Alec Ullman. The Alec Ullman Strait now has a bridge going over to it, so people will have more access to it. There's going to be a sign back there to explain exactly who Alec Ullman was and why he's important to this property. Tom Christensen, turn 3 is Christensen Corner. A lot of people don't know it's Christensen Corner, but that was done I think it was in 2016, shortly after I got here. It hasn't had quite as much notoriety. People haven't really called it Christensen Corner very frequently. We put a sign over there that now says Christensen Corner and explains why Tom Christensen is a big deal, because he's won more races here than anybody else, overall victories. So there's a sign out there honoring him for that. But I had Ken look at the Ullman sign. I had Doug look at the Ullman sign. Had them both look at the Christensen Corner sign, and they're extremely valuable people. Because if you're going to start talking about the history, I think I know the history, but I can be wrong. And it's really good to have two incredibly valuable assets like those two. And, frankly, if you need a picture of somebody or something from this racetrack's history, one of the two of them is going to have it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Wayne, as the improvements have come, I remember when Matt and you guys replaced the Green Park Gateway drive-over bridge. That was supposed to be a temporary bridge. It was temporary for about 50 years. And it was in very shaky shape when they took it down. I don't think anybody really appreciated what a challenge it was to actually go over that thing.
It was, but as far as it being shaky, man, we kept thinking, man, maybe a storm would just take this thing out. But apparently it was better than you think because it stood up very well, and it wasn't the easiest when they got ready to take it down. It was just the strangest thing about it was the sensation you got when you drove up on the thing.
Yes.
Because as you're driving up it, you're just looking off into the sky and then boom, flat. Now you're looking at the horizon and then boom, now you're looking at the ground. There were several bridges on this property like that at one time. That was the last one. I don't think anyone misses it, though.
Yeah, the one on the west end of the front stretch, I went over one time and vowed I would never go over it again. It was it was a thrilling ride, but it was part of what's Sebring. And if I might, we're already into 75 years of racing at Sebring, because this past New Year's Eve day on 2025 was the first 6-hour race that was run out there. Of course, it won't be till 27 that the first 12-hour race goes out there. But there's a lot of replacements of stuff that people don't really notice that you've done out there. Safety replacements, like replacing the tire walls with that Tech Pro Tech Pro barrier stuff. That you've done a lot of things that aren't really noticeable to fans that much, but have really improved the overall timbre of racing out there.
Yeah, I'm going to give Matt a lot of credit for that too, because he's been at the forefront of operations and maintenance of this property for the entire decade that I've been here. And one of the first times I drove around this racetrack, not on the track, but just driving around the property, and I was here with Scott Atherton was the president of IMSA at that time, and he'd been very close to this property, very close to Dr. Panos, and he started to tell me how all of our tire barriers just looked terrible because, they weren't consistent. They were not, if you looked at them, they had different kinds of tires and there were different levels. It looked like a bunch of dominoes that were stacked out there, and it did not look like the kind of tire barrier that you'd want to see if you went to an F1 track. And when I went to, shortly before the WEC came here, I was dispatched to my very first European trip, and I went to Spa to a WEC event, and I did see what the Spa tire barriers looked like, and they must have had a deal with Michelin or somebody who sent every kind of tire that was exactly the same, because every tire barrier. So I realized what Scott was talking about, and we had already begun working on that, but and it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it takes a really long time to do it, and plus we've got guys out here 50 weeks out of the year that are crashing into these walls, and the tire barriers are getting replaced constantly, but they're always being, you'd like to think that you're always going to have the same kind of tire. When you're dealing with scrap tires, you get what you get. And most of the tire barriers that are out here are like test run tires. Like Michelin will send us a truckload of tires, and they've all had the sidewalls cut in them so that they can't possibly be used on the road. But they make nice cushions for cars to bounce off of. We've also added a lot of belting. They use conveyor belt material around a lot of these tire barriers to hold them together whenever cars crash into them, so the tires just don't go everywhere. And yeah, there's been a great deal of work on that. Fencing, we have put in miles and miles of fence over the past decade, replacing a lot of it, installing some new. And in some cases, the fans may not be too crazy about it because, there didn't used to be a fence here. Another reason there's got to be a fence there is because, cars have a way of sending stuff into those fans, and safety of the fans is the number one priority.
Speaking of the fans, I was going to wait till later, but one of the best things that I ever saw, and it's got to be one of your highlight reel moments, is when you took the La Bamba racer and did a lap around the track with La Bamba. That's something that involved the fans and probably was as thrilling to the guys hanging on the fences as it was to the guys in the vehicle itself.
You ask, do fans make a difference? The way that came about is they asked me. I said, "Oh man, we just really would love to just one time just take a lap around the racetrack." And my answer was, "You can if you take me with you."
Wayne says it's okay.
Yeah, that never flew. By the way, if anybody out here ever tries to use that line on any of the employees out here, they know the person is not telling the truth. Because I told every employee out here, if anybody ever comes up and says, "Wayne said," I said, they are feeding you a line, because I will not do that to the employees out here. It's not fair. It's just not fair to people to, okay, these are the credentials that are admitted through this gate and nothing else. And then some guy drives up. Well, Wayne said I could go through here with this. I could pull my trailer through here. No, I don't do that to people. That's no way to treat your employees.
Yeah, we were talking about the new fencing and the new barricades that have gone up and that kind of thing. And I can tell you from watching this race for almost 50 years now, there always were other races out here. The SCCA would run out here, HSR, those kinds of races. But since 2015, there has been just an immense number of different cars and different sanctioning bodies that have run out here, and big races too, like the Trans Am race, the SCCA Nationals. I mean, you oversaw the first 24-hour race out here, the Crovantic race. So there's been a lot of not 12-hour races that have been pretty important races out here.
This track has a way of attracting a lot of firsts as well. The first WEC race was run here in 2012. The first Trans Am race was run as part of the 12 hours. Chin is one of the best car clubs that operates out here. It was created out here at the front gate. There's just so many different things that happen here for the very first time. And that's just part of what Sebring is. Sebring's been we use that birthplace of American endurance racing line here from the very beginning because of what happened here with that race 75 years ago on New Year's Eve. But this track just has a way of giving birth to certain things. It's pretty incredible. Every time you turn around, first time we ever did that was at Sebring, our first race, Sebring. The first U.S. Grand Prix for Formula One, Sebring. So we have done a lot of new things out here in the past 10 years, but even before we got here, it's just had a way of attracting a lot of new things. We've got coming up this year, though, Porsche Sprint Challenge is going to happen 2 weeks before the 12 hours. After the 12 hours, we have SRO is going to be coming again this year, but Ferrari Challenge will be here in April, I think. We've every year, just like everywhere else in Florida, January, February, March, that's your busy season. And it is incredibly busy out here. There's just really almost no time for the guys to work on the racetrack from the guys that bump into the walls. That's why they work all night long. And people say, "Oh, I heard stuff out there all night long." Yep, that's the way it operates. We have to make hay when the sun shines, and in a lot of cases, you're making hay when the sun shines when the sun's already gone down. Because these guys work out here around the clock. Got race cars on the track by day, and they have to fix up and spruce up and put the new banners up because a new partner comes in, like this year, Lexus is going to be the official car out here. So got to have new banners. If the Mobil 1 ones are fading, got to put those up. Fallon J's got something new that's got to go up. It's got to go up, and it's got to go on the racetrack. It has to go up in after hours. So this is a busy place. It is not unusual for an employee of this racetrack to tell someone that they work at the racetrack, and they say, "Well, okay, I know you're out here for the 12 hours. What do you do the rest of the year?" But there are cars on this racetrack. It's not like we have Rotary Club meetings and fundraisers and things like that. We have race cars on this track 300 days a year. And I don't know, there may not be another track in this country that has cars on the track 300 days a year. If so, I'd say the numbers, I'm sure you can count them on one hand, but I'm pretty confident we might have the record for the most active days in a year.
It wouldn't surprise me a bit, but where we go to church almost every Sunday, we can hear cars on the track out there, and people a lot further away tell me that they can hear it out there too. Wayne, can you tell me, what do you think is the most challenging race that you ever overseen out here at the track in the past 10 years?
Well, when the WEC came to town, it certainly presented a lot of challenges. For a variety of reasons. You're juggling international motorsports politics. There's politics between the IMSA guys and the European guys, and the European guys are sure that they're the most important part of the show. we all know that the 12 hours is the engine of the train, and it pulls everything else we do, including things like that. And if the WEC thought they were such big shots, then they would have run on a different weekend. But they wanted to ride the coattails of 12 hours too. But they wanted to be the most important thing here. And when you have things of that scale that come in, and they're coming via shipping containers, and you got to find a place for shipping containers, and the volume of materials that they brought in, and their schedule, and their demands. The WEC was by far the most challenging organization to come in here. So they came 3 times, only raced twice, because they came during they were set to open up their paddock on the morning after President Trump at that time closed the borders to everyone in Europe, especially the Italians. We already had a whole bunch of Italians. We had the Ferrari teams and Lamborghini teams, and we had a paddock full of Italians. And of course, that's what everybody was scared of at that time. So I'd say those 3 events, though, were massively challenging to put on, because you try to do that in the middle of what is your big event, and that was tough. The other, if there was another one that I would say was a great challenge, just on its own, and most people don't even remember this happened, but that first Creventic race that took place,
yes,
was unbelievable. It was a matter of, we were watching shipping containers and watching boats and trying to figure out where they were and how we were going to get them through the ports, because our gates opened up and they were supposed to be set up and their cars were still at sea. We had fans that had arrived waiting to see races, and the cars were not in the country yet. And we had options. And we decided, okay, anybody who wants their money back can have their money back. No questions asked. Not a problem. But while we're at it, why don't we see if we can just do some things to entertain people while they're here? And, we let people line up and drive their cars on the racetrack, because we had plenty of open time on the track. They were supposed to race from midday Friday to midday Saturday. We had spectator cars on the track. We didn't have containers in here until late Friday night.
Wow.
The race did begin the next day, and it did end Sunday night on time. Well, they got all 24 hours in, which was in itself an incredible feat. But to me, the biggest thing I was most proud of our team is that they managed to entertain the people that were here. And we didn't have 10 people ask for their money back. They were entertained. They had a great weekend. We kind of had just a little separate party out there, and we all got to know each other really well. And everybody had a big time. And there's a lesson in that. The motorsports activities for a lot of people are just background music. You have to give people the opportunity to socialize, to fraternize, it is really about the brotherhood and the sisterhood of the people that are out there. They're coming out here to be entertained, and in a lot of cases, they entertain themselves. But you got to give them a good setting in which to do that, which is what campgrounds do. It's what theme parks do. It's what racetracks do, and we have to stay in touch with those people. Listen to them and give them what they want. And
I guess the gingerbread, you would say, some of the things that are not race necessarily oriented, is that over the course of the years, the kinds of talent that have been brought in for the concert series and some of the off-track events has been just spectacular.
That is something that, when you wade into that, that when you wade into it, you're going to end up neck deep in it. And if you don't do something and you never do it, then it's not expected. Once you do it once, then it becomes expected. And for us, and the person who made it possible was Alan Wildstein. When Alan J. was willing to put up the sponsorship for us to do the Craig Morgan concert, then people after that and we knew it was coming. It's like, okay, you had Craig Morgan last year. Who do you have coming this year? And that's just the nature of the thing. You cannot please everybody, and that's one of the things that people say, what is your expectation? How many complaints are you willing to have? And this is something that Jeff Bird at Bristol Motor Speedway taught me a long time ago. Your tolerance for any complaint is one too many. You have to try to make everybody happy. And there are those that you can't possibly make everybody happy, but you never quit trying. And with music, you are not going, as much as I want to say, we got to make everybody happy. If you do a country show, the rock guys aren't going to like it. If you do a classic rock show, the country people aren't going to like it. Or the younger guys who say, why don't you do something for people who are like not 70 years old? But you do what you can in the entertainment world, and if people like it, it's like, okay, this year I like the concert. We'll see if I like it 2 years from now. This year's Colt Ford show is one that a lot of people are pretty excited about. We had the Marshall Tucker show last year. A lot of people are very excited about. I think they may be doing the Strawberry Festival this year, and people are still excited about it. Is it the same group that recorded all those albums we know 50 years ago? No. But they still play that kind of music, and people love it. And the music thing is interesting. It's one that everybody expects you to be able to do. People think you should have a concert or a festival, or you should do this or do that. It's very difficult to do those things, though, Barry, because for one thing, the concert promoters, the agents, they see you coming. They know you're locked in on a certain date, and you want a certain kind of act. The people who are in this business long term, they know a whole lot more about it than they know as much about the concert business as we know about motorsports. We don't know that business. We don't know the music business, and it makes it very challenging to try to put on a show. If we had decided, like Daytona has successfully come up with a way to do a music festival, and it's on its feet now, it is going to continue on for years to come. But they have a concert promoter that puts that on. For us to do that, we would have to do the same thing. But for us to do that, we'd also have to give up a weekend of track rentals, because our weekends are booked. We have something in here every weekend. Yeah. The only time we're not busy is if Christmas falls on a weekend, then we're not going to rent that day. But New Year's Eve's okay. We got SCCA. SCCA comes out here on Thanksgiving. Somebody's out here every weekend, except if Christmas falls on the weekend.
So when the 74th is rocking right on, I mean, the things are moving ballistically straight ahead. The focus, I think, is going to be on next year with the 75th and all the activities around the 75th running of the America's premier sports car endurance race. So you're focused there. But you are, I hate to use the R word because I don't think it's really true, but you're going to be retiring on March the 31st. Of this year. So what's next for Wayne? What are you doing after this now?
So Rita and I have talked about this quite a bit. Rita has a number of things that she wants me to do. And I've said, here's the thing. For what I told her originally, I said, the first 2 weeks after and she's calling it graduate. She's not using the R word either. She says, so when you graduate, you do something. I don't know if she thinks I just sound older that way or what. Maybe she thinks she sounds older. She will never admit that. But she says, so when you graduate, and I said, Rita, don't give me anything to do. I want 2 weeks of nothing. I don't want to do anything, but I'm going to do what I want to do at the moment that I want to do it. I don't want to have any plans, nothing. I'd like to read a few books that I've not been able to catch up on in a while. I'd like to just chill. And as it happens, at Christmas time when we were doing our Christmas party here for the employees surprised Rita and me, and they gave us a cruise. And so on right after, the week after Easter, we were going to be on a cruise. So that's in that 2 week window. So I went back to Rita and said, okay, the clock starts after the cruise. Nothing for 2 weeks after the cruise. So that's what we're going to do. And I've told her, I said, I don't want any plans at this time, but we've got friends that we haven't caught up with in a very long time that have for years have been saying, you should come up to so-and-so, or you should come to New England, come to Charleston, come to another part of Florida. And I'm eager to see people again, because when you are in this job, you really are responsible. You don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, there could be a cave-in. There could be a tower could topple. A window could fall out. And if that happens, you don't want to be, 1,000 miles away. And I've just never really been able to turn the switch off. So for these past 10 years, it has really been a 24/7, 365 kind of job. Now, did I work all the time? No. But you never completely disconnect if there's a race car on the track, because you just don't know. And if no matter what happens on this racetrack, I was very interested in what it was. So I'm better now. Whenever this year started happening, I have sort of distanced myself and let Matt be completely. He's the guy now who's completely responsible for everything that happens on the racetrack. But it's a different mindset, and I do look forward to it. But I'm never going to be completely disinterested in this place. I'm already talking about one of the things that we want to do for the 75th anniversary is we want to resurrect the formal ball. Now, there's nothing as formal as it used to be, right? So I'm sure it won't be a complete formal ball, but we plan to have an event next year, the week before the 12 hours, at the hotel, and it will benefit United Way. Well, I work with United Way, so naturally I'm going to be the guy who's going to be involved in that, along with some other key people, like Susie Bishop, who's done it before, or like Sharon Kyber, who's done it before. Like Mayor Shoup will be involved, just because he's been a part of this for a very long time. So we're kind of a committee that's getting this thing started. But I say all this because the 12 hours, you don't live in Sebring and not have it be a part of you. And I'm not going to completely disconnect. I'll be a part of it for a long time to come. It's just I'm not in charge. I don't have the responsibilities or the. I tell everybody around here, I already don't have the horsepower. It's just perfectly okay by me. But I'm certainly going to lend my support wherever I can. And if they need me to do something over here, if they need me to, whatever they need me to do, they can always pick up the phone and call me and ask me if I'm available. And by golly, I'll try to make myself available.
I'm glad you're sticking around, that you're not going anyplace. We are going to miss you, and I have enough questions here to do a whole nother hour. But there's one question I really wanted to ask you. I asked you what was your biggest challenge? What out of the top 10, pick one or two. What's the most fun that you've had out there at the 12? Things that are just big thrills or big fun.
So tragedy can also produce fun things too. Like when COVID hit, the financial hit that this racetrack took, you just cannot imagine. I've never been a part. It's one thing to miss budget, but it's another thing when you come up in the red for a year and having to produce 3 IMSA weekends in a year when you only have the revenue. Well, heck, we didn't have the revenue. People couldn't go to the things, or they were still impacted by COVID and restrictions and not being able to travel. And we lost a lot of money that year. And I'm not saying against budget. We lost money. But from that, when the WEC backed out and people had paid for their tickets to see both 12 hours and a WEC race, and now the WEC is not coming, we said, what are we going to give people? We got to make up for this somehow. And we started, said, okay, here's what we'll do. When they come in, we'll give them coupons, and they can get free beer, they can get free soft drinks, they can get free this. And we handed out these coupons, and we had a specific time that the free beer thing was going to happen. It was going to be on Wednesday night. And I said, I'll go out there and I'll hand those beers out. So just so I can shake hands and tell people thank you for coming. Well, they liked that a lot. The people really liked it. And they said, you going to do this next year? Well, hadn't really thought about it. Well, it's now a tradition. And, funny thing is people really like free beer. So,
no.
Yeah, they do. I think it's everybody's favorite brand. So, that has been a very fun thing because it's kind of like on the 12-hour weekend, if somebody has something they want to talk to me about, they will make sure that they come to that thing that we do. And it's something that's just become part of us. And I'll probably be passing that baton on to Matt here because it's extraordinarily valuable. Among the other things is there have been so many people that have come through here that have just been so much fun. I mean, spending time with Jordan Taylor has been terrific. Spending time with Sebastian Bourdais after Sebastian Bourdais drove a car that was falling apart and managed to get that thing to the winner's circle. That's of the races that have happened during my tenure here, that is by far the most memorable because his car, because it had no aerodynamics effects on it, would race down the straightaways because it had no drag. But when it got to the corners, it couldn't go through the corners for anything. So getting to know him after that race has been really fun. I was in a car. The first time I met him, I was driving down Allen J. Boulevard through the paddock, and he saw the decals on my car, knew I worked at the racetrack, and he was holding his uniform, and he stopped me and said, "Hey, you work here, right?" And yes, I do. And he said, "I need to get this uniform cleaned. Do you know where I can get this thing cleaned?" I said, "Does it need to be just like machine washed or what?" And he said, "Yeah, machine washed is fine." I said, "Okay, I'll take it to my house." And I drove over to my house. I washed it, hung it up. I said, "Don't dry it, right?" He said, "Yeah, don't dry it. Just hang it up after you wash it." I said, "Okay." And I brought it back to him, and somebody later said, "Hey, the president of the racetrack, that's what it is, right?" He said, "No, I didn't." So that was fun. This past weekend, Bill Elliott was here competing in the SVRA races. And he had a lot of time on his hands, and we visited for extended periods of time. This is a guy I worked pretty closely with when he was winning races and championships, like his 87, 88, 89 years when he was Bill Elliott. I mean, when he was challenging for the 92 championship.
$1 million Bill, yeah.
When he was $1 million Bill, that's when I was there working with him. And we never sat down and just chatted. But this past weekend we did, and it was great. It's just phenomenal. But among the people that you get to know, and it's just such a thrill, is a lot of those people, they're out in turn 10, they're out in turn 11, they're out in, some of the things that happen in Green Park are just so fun and funny, and the people that are out there are just a delight. And those are some of the greatest memories out here are just the people who come back here year after year who have a passion for it and will tell you that. And when I stand out at the gate, when we open it up to campers and the guys are rolling in their RVs on used to be on Wednesday morning, now it's Tuesday afternoon because the fans asked for it. When they come in on Tuesday afternoon, they always manage to roll their window down and they'll see me and they'll tell me how many years it is for them or what year they came here the first time. And that is just a delight. How many places can you go where somebody rolls in and they want to tell you that they've been coming for 27 straight years? I've been coming here for 42 years. It's just phenomenal. Phenomenal.
How many tracks have a waiting area outside their front gate like Sebring has where they're waiting for 3 weeks to get in?
Yeah, I think we might have the record there too.
Yeah,
I really do.
It's amazing. It's astonishing, and I'll tell you, we are going to miss you, Wayne. But as always, when you come back to do your emeritus stuff for the 75th, anything we can do to help out, you let me know, will you please?
Barry, you've been a great supporter for the entire time I've been here, and I thank you for it. Always enjoyed doing the radio show in the past, and just it's been a kick doing the podcast with you today.
We appreciate it so much. And Wayne Estes, outgoing president of the Sebring International Raceway, and giving us kind of a look back over the tenure of his 10 years with us. You've been listening to the Barry Foster Show, coming to you from the Ridge Floor Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park, as always. Any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions, put them in the comments below. We love to hear from you. And get your flowers at Ridge Florist. We really appreciate them so much. As we continue to look for truth, justice, and the American way, Barry Foster, and we'll see you next time.